All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Sure. My name is Etta Sullivan. Last name is Sullivan.
And where do you live then?
Right now I live in Plymouth.
And how long have you lived in Plymouth?
Since July of the past summer, so not even a year yet.
And do you work there?
I do.
And what do you do for work?
I'm a director at a memory care community.
How long have you been doing that?
Just over a year.
Now, do you have any siblings?
I do.
And how many siblings do you
I have two,
have? Older, younger?
both older,
And brother, sister?
brother and sister,
And your sister, what is her?
Laura Sullivan.
And what is sort of the age difference between yourself and your sister Laura?
We are 10 years apart.
Now, if I could turn your attention to New Year's, specifically 2021 into 2022. Do you recall that time frame?
I do.
And do you recall where it was that you were or where you were going for that time?
Yes, sir. We were going to Aruba for a family trip.
And is that sort of an annual family trip?
It has become since then. It was the first time I had attended.
And do you recall sort of the time frame on that trip as far as when you were leaving, when you were coming back?
Yeah. So we left on Friday the 31st, and we returned the next week, Friday the 7th.
And when you say we, who is we?
My mother and I flew out together with another group of people to meet my sister and brother-in-law down in Aruba.
And at that time, so to meet them down there, had your sister Laura, had she flown down prior to you?
She had, yes.
And at that particular time, were you dating someone?
I was seeing somebody, yes.
And the person that you were seeing, was that person coming on the trip as well?
He was, yeah, the day after we got there.
So your sister arrives on the 30th, you arrive on the 31st, and the person you were seeing arrives on the 1st?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you arrived there, do you know about how many people were on this trip?
I would say over 30, upwards of, yeah, I would say over 30 is the best estimate I could give you.
And as far as this trip was concerned, do you recall where you stayed?
Yep, we stayed at the Renaissance Aruba.
Is that someone that you stayed on this occasion as well as subsequent occasions?
Yes.
And on the 31st, when you and your mother arrived, do you recall about what time of day it was that you got there?
So our flight landed around 3:30-ish. I would say we weren't at the hotel much later than that.
And with regard to the hotel has a lobby area, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe to the jury sort of what does that layout look like? What does the lobby look like?
Sure. So right when you walk in the front doors, right in front of you is the check-in desks, 3 or 4 of them in front of you. To the left of you, when you come in, is a hallway to one side of the hotel. To the right of you is a bank of elevators that leads to another hallway that leads to the other first floor side of the hotel. You're in a big lobby, and then directly across from where the elevators are is the entrance to the pool area.
And when you arrive there at some point in time in the late afternoon of the 31st, you obviously check into your room, and then following that, where do you go?
So we checked into our room, and then happy hour was starting around 4:30, so we met everybody down at the pool for that time.
Is there a bar in that area of the pool?
Yes, pool bar.
And so when you get down to the pool bar area, who, if anyone specifically, did you see or did you run into?
So first ran into my sister, gave her a hug, the rest of the kids and my brother. As soon as I got into the pool, I ran into Johnny and a couple of our other friends that were sitting at the pool bar down there.
And with reference to who you refer to as Johnny, what's his last name?
John O'Keefe.
And that was someone that you knew at the time, is that correct?
Yes.
And how did you know this was?
He was a very, very dear family friend. He was very close to my sister, subsequently became very close to me and my family as a result. And he was my nephew's godfather.
And fair to say that you had known him for some substantial period of time?
Yeah, since Ben's father unfortunately passed away.
So at this point in time, when we're talking about turning from 2021 to 2022, how long had you known Mr. O'Keefe at that point?
Oh, man. Probably about 8, 9 years. It's as long as my nephew's been alive.
And when is it that you would see, or how often would you see Mr. O'Keefe?
Family parties, any family party that we threw, kids' birthday parties, and my sister's Christmas party that she would throw every year.
And how would you describe sort of the nature of your relationship with Mr. O'Keefe?
He was similar to a big brother to me. He was somebody who was there for my sister during her darkest times, so I really respected him for that. But yeah, he was a big brother and a family friend.
Now, when you saw Mr. O'Keefe at the pool bar after you arrived there, what, if any, conversation did you have with him, or what, if anything, were the two of you doing around that time?
So I went up to him in the pool. He had his Alabama hat on. He expressed to me that he was excited to watch the Alabama football game at the pool bar. Given the circumstances, we were in a beautiful tropical place, and he got to watch his favorite college team play football. And he said that's all he really wanted to do for the day, was be able to watch that game.
Now, at this point in time that you're talking to Mr. O'Keefe, were you aware of him dating anybody? Had you met anybody that he was dating at that time?
I had not met the person that he was dating. I had heard about her through family friends and other people that were on the trip.
So as far as the other sort of family events that you would see Mr. O'Keefe at, Ms. Reed or his girlfriend at that time wasn't there with him?
No.
So after the time that you spent at the pool bar that afternoon, do you recall what else you did that evening?
Yep. So most of us in the group had dinner reservations. I believe they were around 7 p.m. and we were all getting ready to leave the pool bar to get picked up around 6:30.
And as far as a fairly large group that went out to dinner that night?
Yeah, most of us.
And was Mr. O'Keefe part of that group that went out to dinner?
He was not.
Do you recall about what time it was that you got back to or returned to the hotel?
Most of us got back a little after 9. Taxis were kind of crazy to get, so little after 9.
And when you got back to the hotel, where did you go?
I went upstairs to check on my mom. She had gone in a bank of taxis before me, so I went upstairs to make sure that she was up there and safe and in the room.
And so however long you spent up in the room with your mother, at some point did you come back?
I did.
And when you came back down, by down, I mean, do you recall where you were staying in the hotel?
Yep, so we were on the 4th floor of the hotel, so I took the elevator up and then I took it back down to the lobby.
At that point in time when you're getting back from dinner, going up to the room and coming back down, were you aware of where Mr. O'Keefe and his niece and nephew were staying?
Yeah, I knew where they were staying, yes, room-wise, yep.
And where was that in relation to the lobby?
1st floor.
So lobby's on the 1st floor, their rooms are on the 1st floor?
Yes.
So when the elevator gets down to the lobby level, you get out, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And what if any?
So you have to say, okay.
You just have to answer yes or no.
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. So the elevator gets sent down to the lobby, you walk out, who, if anyone, do you see when you come out?
So when the elevator opens up, the first person I saw was the attendant standing behind the desk. I didn't see anybody else in the lobby with me until I stepped out. When I stepped out, I looked to my left and I saw Johnny coming in through the first set of outside doors.
Now, as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned, was there any other sort of term that you would use to refer to him?
Johnny or Godfather.
And, Your Honor, I think this may be the appropriate.
All right. So folks, I'm going to say again that first instruction I gave you with the last witness, that you're about to hear testimony about certain conduct or behavior allegedly committed by the defendant. Ms. Reed is not charged with committing any crimes other than those charged within the indictment. So this witness's testimony may not and must not be considered by you as any evidence that the defendant has a bad character or as evidence that she may have a propensity to commit the crimes with which she's been charged. You may not take the defendant's prior acts that you'll hear about as a substitute for proof that the defendant committed the crimes charged here. But you may consider the act solely on the limited issue of the defendant's state of mind and the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe as it might go to motive or intent. You may not consider this evidence for any other purpose. Specifically, you may not use it to conclude that if the defendant committed these acts, that she must also have committed the offenses with which she's been charged. You can only use the evidence for the limited purpose of how it goes to the defendant's state of mind, motive, and the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe. And for the same findings that I made at sidebar.
Proceed, John?
Yes.
Thanks. So you walk out of the elevator, you're by yourself, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you see Mr. O'Keefe. Could you see where Mr. O'Keefe was in relation to the lobby or where he was coming from?
He was coming from the outside doors into the lobby.
Is that where the pool bar is located?
Opposite side.
Opposite.
Yes.
And when you see him come in, who, if anyone, did you see with him initially?
Nobody with him.
And what, if anything, was he doing or how was he acting sort of when he came?
So he sort of stumbled in. I came out of the elevator and my initial response to him was, "Whoa, you okay?" I actually said, "Whoa, Godfather, are you okay?" But yeah, he was stumbling into the lobby.
And did you go over to him at that point?
I did. I went up to him and I gave him a hug.
And what happened then?
I pulled back. He was glassy-eyed, looking above me. We never made eye contact. He was looking above me. It looked like he was looking for someone. I asked him, "Where are you going?" assuming that he would be coming to the pool bar to meet us. He kept looking around and he indicated that he was going that way and pointed toward a bank of rooms to our right. And I said, "Well, you should go that way." And I stepped back and I guided him toward the area that he was going.
Now, as far as the bank of rooms to the right, you indicated that you were familiar or aware of where Mr. O'Keefe was and where the children were. Is that correct?
I know they were on the first floor. I'm not 100% positive as to where exactly their rooms were.
And if you know, did you know whether or not that Mr. O'Keefe was staying in the same room as Patrick and Kaylee at that point?
I didn't know if they were staying in the same room or not, no.
So you point him in that direction, and what happened?
So I pointed in that direction. He walked off. I continued out to the pool bar when I heard very loudly his name screamed across the lobby very angrily, and it made me stop in my tracks.
And when you stop in your tracks, what happened?
I started to turn around to come back in. So once you go out to the pool bar, you kind of go around a corner and you go out of view. So I turned around to go back in. As I'm going back in, I hear someone yell, "Who the fuck was that?" And as I come around the corner, I see Mr. O'Keefe walking toward a woman. And he said, excuse me. He said, "Calm down, that's Laura's little sister."
And what happened then?
When I came back around the corner, I said, after Mr. O'Keefe said, "Calm down, that's Laura's little sister," I said, "Hi, nice to meet you." That's when Miss Reed's head snapped up, and she very loudly told me to go fuck myself across the lobby. And I said, "Yeah, fuck you too," and walked away.
And just to be clear, when you say Miss Reed, this is someone that you became familiar with as the trip went along?
This was my first interaction with her. I had never been fully introduced to her at all. I just had seen her sitting by the side of the pool when I had been talking to Johnny earlier in the day.
And the person you know to be Miss Reed, do you see her in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you just describe as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing?
Sure. She's in a black and white checkered blazer. She's 2 people in from you.
Just ask the record to reflect identification when defended by the witness.
Yes.
Thank you. As far as Ms. Reed was concerned, what, if anything, did you observe as far as the defendants beyond the yelling? What, if anything, did you observe as far as her demeanor or how she was acting at the time that this interaction was going on?
She was just very loud. She very, energetically screamed for me to go fuck myself. She was waving her hands. Johnny was trying to calm her down. And after I said, "Yeah, fuck you too," I went out to the pool bar, so I didn't see much after that.
And could you hear anything as far as when you were walking out to the pool bar, as far as any other conversation between the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe?
Not after that first time, no.
you go back to the, or you go out to the pool bar, and who, if anyone, did you talk to?
I went straight up to my older sister, Laura, who was out to dinner with the couple the night before. And I said,
I'll allow this part.
I went up to her and I looked at her and I said, John O'Keefe's girlfriend? And she looked at me and said, Karen? And I said, yeah, you guys like her? She said, yeah, she's okay. And I said, well, she sucks.
Now, following that, that particular, at any point in time later in that evening, did you see either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed later on that evening?
I did not see them, no.
And when was the next time that you did see them?
I saw them briefly on the 2nd, which was the day that we rented cabanas on the island.
And when you say you briefly saw them, about, can you describe it?
So we had all rented the cabanas. Each family had one or they were sharing one. I was sharing one with my family down at the end. We got about halfway through the day and realized that their family cabana was still empty. So I saw them about halfway through the day when they did come to the cabana, and I briefly saw Miss Reed and Mr. O'Keefe at the pool, the island bar, that same day, but there was no conversation.
Now, with regard to Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed, at some point in time on that day of the cabanas, what, if any, conversation did you have with your sister regarding that?
So my
Objection.
I don't know what this is. I'll see it sidebar quickly. Jurors, please be mindful of that second instruction that I gave you regarding evidence of statements made by John O'Keefe for the limited purpose of establishing his state of mind. And I will fully give you this instruction again at the end of the case. So, but it's the same one that I already gave you. Go ahead, Mr. Lally.
Ms. Sullivan, with regard to the day of the cabanas, did you have some conversation with your sister Laura in regard to Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed?
I did.
And what, if anything, did your sister Laura tell you she had learned from Mr. O'Keefe?
So my sister pulled me aside from everybody and asked if the night that I got into the altercation with Miss Reed in the lobby, if I was making out with Mr. O'Keefe.
How did you respond?
That I absolutely was not.
And when you say absolutely was not, beyond the fact that it didn't occur, why would that not occur?
I'll allow it.
He was family. He was my older brother. For all intents and purposes, it just never would have happened between us.
And you expressed that to your sister, is that correct?
I did, yes.
Now, as far as the remainder of the trip was concerned, starting with the defendant, Ms. Reed, what, if any, other interaction did you have with her?
None.
And as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned, what, if any, further interaction did you have with him?
None. That was it.
And was that normal or as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned? Objection.
I'll allow it.
That, as far as I knew Johnny, that wasn't normal. He would always come up to us, up to our family, try to be around my nephew, his godchild, and he was always the life of the party and wanted to be around his family and his friends.
And following that trip in Aruba, did you see Mr. O'Keefe again?
I did not.
I have nothing further on.
All right, Ms. Giannetti.
Thank you, Ron. Good afternoon, Ms. Sullivan.
Good afternoon.
Fair to say that you were not at the Waterfall Bar and Grill on January 28th of 2022 in Canton.
I was not.
You were not at 34 Fairview Road in Canton on January 29th, correct?
Was not.
Yet Trooper Proctor drove all the way to Pembroke to interview you on February 8th of 2022. Did he not?
He did.
Nothing further.
Mr. Lally, anything?
Just very briefly. Ms. Sullivan, when Trooper Proctor came to the house in Pembroke, were you living there at that time?
I was.
And was he alone or was he with another trooper?
He was with another trooper.
And do you recall that trooper's name?
I don't.
Now, with regard to your conversation with Trooper Proctor and the other trooper that day, was it just you that he spoke to?
Just me.
Let me ask it a different one.
Okay.
As far as when the troopers came to your house on February 8th, are you the only person from your home that the troopers spoke to that day?
No.
Who, if anyone else, did they speak to in the home?
They spoke to my sister first.
And at any point, did they speak to your sister's boyfriend as well?
No.
And when they spoke to you, and when they spoke to you, where was your sister?
She was outside of the house. She went to go pick up my nephew.
And when they spoke to your sister, where were you?
I was downstairs in my room, which was in the basement.
And could you hear what they were talking about when they were talking to your sister?
I could not.
All right, Ms. Sullivan, you're all set.
Thank you.
All right, so jurors, we're actually finished with witnesses for today. We've finished everyone that we had hoped to finish for today. So we're done for the day. As you know, we're not in session tomorrow, but we will see you Friday, and Friday will be a full day. So please, those 3 cautions: do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into the case. If you happen to see